It'll definitely
Hi,
stay
how's
like that.
this? How
We
does
do
this
this
sound?
every
How's the
single
level?
time.
Sit back like you're going to during the podcast
No,
and talk
I'm
to
gonna
us.
sit
You're
like
not
this.
going to. You're not. You never do. Right, now talk. Stop coming closer.
Like no, because my headphones.
Hey, welcome to Beer Christianity. My name is Jonty.
I'm Laura.
I'm Malky.
And today we are joined by Bella. Hey, Bella.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So good to have you here. Do you want to do a little intro about yourself to the listeners?
Sure. My name's Bella. My pronouns they, them. I'm a Christian. I'm a campaigner and organizer. That's what my life revolves around in work and outside of it. And at the moment, a lot of that focuses on solidarity with Palestine, and trying to kind of do that as a queer person, as a Christian person.
And your work is largely about political education. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like?
Sure. So I think there's quite a large gap in political education amongst Christians that has surprised me, especially working quite closely with university groups. As a former politics student, I've probably taken it for granted that people have a understanding of politics and know how to engage. So been designing some training packages and kind of getting that out to empower young Christians to speak out and get politically involved.
And why do you think that is, that there's such a gap there?
I think it's kind of two things. I think generally political education in the UK is terrible. I think that's a deliberate choice. The way that history and politics is taught in the UK is very political. The deliberate ignoring of colonialism or glorifying the British Empire, to just even not really explaining how first past the post works or anything like that, how to utilize our democratic rights or the rights that we do have in general. Something that I'm really passionate about is I'm an abolitionist as well. And I think the way that we're taught to view policing and those kind of things, it's a lot about manufacturing consent. So there's that side of it. And then the faith-based side, I think that's kind of compounded with a lot of ideas among Christians that we shouldn't be involved in politics because it's dirty. There are lots of Christian groups, kind of on the far right in a lot of countries that are organizing and mobilizing very effectively. But I think in the UK generally tends to be more of an apathy. And I think people take quite a individualistic approach to doing what they think is justice. So, it's great that people are happy to volunteer for a day at food bank or they'll do a bake sale. Those are great things, but to me, it's not enough. And I think it's just planting those seeds in people that they can do more and just showing them the way to do that.
Something that I've heard quite a lot in kind of the Christian political spaces in the UK has been this line that you just should be involved in politics, and it doesn't matter what party, you should be involved in politics as a Christian. I really am more annoyed than when I hear that, the idea that it doesn't matter what party, because obviously there's a material difference. Do you encounter that as you talk to people of faith, that they're looking for a kind of a way that the parties and their policies or their manifestos gel with their own faith?
Definitely. I think there's really strong links between people's kind of theology and their voting or political behavior. To me, Jesus was a socialist. That's so apparent. He went to the most marginalized and welcomed everyone. And to me, that is definitely not represented in a lot of our political parties. To me, like, faith is about liberation, justice, equality, and that definitely doesn't align with most of the political parties in the UK and even the West.
I was just going to go. So, what are those kind of clear points? What are the guiding principles for you in terms of like these things as a Christian kind of impact how I vote or what I'm drawn to politically?
The big one in this election has got to be who is against genocide. I am absolutely never going to support a party that wants to invest in fueling war, whether that be financially, rhetorically, whatever it is. I believe in Palestinian liberation and decolonization. And yeah, I find it abhorrent how especially people of faith are just not bothered enough. I think people feel sad and they see some images and go, oh, that, child with an amputated limb, that's sad, but they're not moved enough. To me, like, this is one of the fundamental issues of our time, along with climate justice. So that's kind of my top priority, and why for me, I will not touch Labour until there's a completely new party. For me as well, as a trans person, I'm not going to vote for a party that is not upholding my rights and my community's rights, failing to ban conversion therapies. There's so many things. The obsession with certain Labour leaders and having women's only spaces in hospitals and, buying into all of these alt-right lines, when I believe there's a moral responsibility as people who proclaim to be progressive to make the case for a more just society, rather than kind of these arguments that, well, they have to win some votes. So I suppose that leads as well onto the third really big thing for me, which is migration. I'm about to start a master's studying that. And I think we have a absolutely evil, disgusting asylum system in the UK. If it was up to me, the Home Office would be abolished tomorrow, immediately ending detention for asylum seekers, ending deportations. And yeah, I'm looking for parties that want to prioritize a kind and compassionate system to welcome people. That's what I'm looking for. So there's a lot more issues. I'm not going to vote for austerity 2.0, but that's the top ones for now.
And without cutting to the end, that sounds like a particular party's manifesto that you just outlined there. I feel like the Green Party kind of hit a lot of those notes.
Definitely. And yeah, I feel like I've been regurgitating a lot of the Green Party's manifesto to people recently, but it isn't. It's amazing to see a party kind of standing up for things that should be very basic now. Things like a national programme of insulation, which obviously supports families to reduce their bills. It's good for the climate. Feels like no-brainers. And yet the kind of two major political parties are more hell-bent on, expressing support for Zionism and genocide, and thinking trans people should die. So, yeah. I don't know if you want to talk about tactical voting here, but for me, I'm going to vote for what aligns with my values.
Yeah, I mean, where are we standing, all of us, on the whole kind of hold your nose and vote for the lesser of two evils? Because this is a conversation that's happening here, it's happening in the States, it's happening in a few places. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and she said that a good friend of hers who was really involved, engaged in this sort of area, had kind of said, "Oh, well, you need to really be thinking about the mother with a poor child who's really kind of struggling in the UK at the moment, can't pay their bills, and you need to think about what's best for that person and how that's gonna do it, and getting the Tories out and voting for Labour's the thing to do that, and that's the thing which I don't know whether it was Labour's the thing to do that, but you have a kind of responsibility to vote in a party that's not going to do that, essentially. The kind of defense tactical voting, yeah, exactly, that being the kind of defense tactical voting. I think particularly with this election, for me, Labour are going to get in. Like, there is no, I don't think anyone is disillusioned with the fact that like Labour are going to win, and so my one vote for the Green Party is a chance for me to, yeah, exactly what you said. Like, I've got to vote with what I believe. Like, I can't, like, as you've as you put it, I can't vote for somebody who's gonna just continue on with genocide. I can't do that morally, and I think in that's still, my voice is still being heard even into that scenario. Like, yes, okay, there's going to be an overwhelming sea of Labour voters, but those extra few votes for Green as they may be, you're still going to be relevant.
Yeah, and actually, I'd argue this is the best time to vote Green, or look, other than Labour, because they are going to win that massive landslide, and we need some MPs in there, whether it's independents or Greens, whatever, to hold them accountable and actually bring in, left-wing policies. Because what is the difference between Labour and the Tories' manifestos right now?
Yeah,
it's not even a situation of the lesser of two evils for me, because I cannot really see any fundamental differences apart from Labour being like, we're not going to do Rwanda because it's too expensive, but we would consider offshoring people to another country anyway. And it's like, well, that is not a lesser of evils. They're not offering any kind of hope, vision, or change. And so I reject that. And I think even tactically, there are lots of places in the UK where people don't realise, but it's very marginal between Labour and Greens, or in Scotland, Labour SNP. And so this kind of lie about you have to vote tactically really just upholds them to do whatever they want.
Feels our political spectrum at the moment is very much those memes that are going around of particularly Donald Trump and Joe Biden, where it's like Donald Trump supports genocide, and then it's Joe Biden supports genocide but with a pride flag and he and pronouns next to it. Like, it's the same thing.
BAE systems,
wearing a different outfit. Like,
she, her.
Yeah, like
come off it.
Yeah, and I think like there's so many examples, as you say, of how far to the right the conversation has been dragged. Because if you go back, I don't know, 5 years or so, or and just look even at the messaging of Labour currently,
even messaging like one of the Keir Starmer in favour of Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, so like the one of the 5 bullet points is a border security patrol or whatever command, border security command. That's like, if you were to show that a few years ago, that's Tory stuff. Like, whereas, as you say,
it's
we're going to
UKIP stuff. It's straight out the BNP playbook. Like the Union Jack flags all over anything is embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like playing into fascism, essentially. Yeah. And it's so dangerous as well. I really think it's so dangerous because neoliberalism has caused such stagnation and crisis and real hardship for so many people across the world. And this is why fascism is rising. And electing more neoliberal governments who are going to do absolutely nothing to solve any of those issues is only going to feed that discontent further. So the only way to counter that is to offer hope and change. Like watching Jeremy Corbyn's video about hope from the 2019 election still makes me cry now. And like, I'm not crying for good reasons at anything Keir Starmer said. Like, it is, yeah, it's.
You're not moved by the fact that, I don't know if you know this, because he doesn't like to talk about it, but did you know that his dad was a toolmaker?
His mother
I've
was
not
a
heard
nurse.
that. Whoa, shock.
Mind blown.
Working
His dad
class
would
hero.
be
Yeah.
rolling in his grave,
Yeah.
like hearing what he's talking about. Yeah, I feel sorry for him.
But so the argument that gets made, and I think in the States it is a sharper argument because of Project 2025, a genuine stated fascist plan for Trump getting in. The argument is often made that, and I think in a way, in a quite blackmailing kind of way, of you've got to think of the most marginalized in society and what happens to them if the right guy doesn't get in, you know? I personally find that incredibly patronizing and also a shifting. It's like
Also, who do you think I'm thinking of when I'm voting for the Green Party?
Yeah.
Word.
Yeah. But I think it's that thing of if these guys get in, it's going to be so much worse. And it's only from a position of privilege where you're insulated in the middle class, where the incremental difference, the tiny differences between Labour and Tory, for instance, will make a real, and it is different in the States, I think, although I think the same principles apply. But it's not like trans people are not marginalized or under threat in 2024. And if they're saying, don't fucking vote for these people, who are you talking about? That would be my, yeah.
Exactly. And, it's such a self-obsessed way to look at politics as well. If both parties are going to continue supporting genocide, continue profiting off of genocide, then people are still losing out. And just because it's like black and brown people in the global south, do they not matter? Like, they matter just as much. So I don't buy it. I understand, but in times of genocide, I think it just goes away, doesn't it?
Well, you're holding up a hypothetical of what might happen to these people when other people are literally being murdered right now.
Yeah.
And again, it's that victim blaming, electoral victim blaming of it's your fault for not voting for us rather than our fault for not making you want to vote for us. Like, surely that should be the right way.
Exactly.
Have some policies I agree with, and then I'll vote for you.
It's your fault for pandering to fascists.
Yeah.
That I won't vote for you, and your policies are, in the long term, only going to slide us further and further into that and damage us all more. So, that's what I've said to. I have a lot of conversations with this about, with my nice but privileged friends from Cambridge, and I say, like, I find it morally objectionable that you will consider doing X, Y, and Z job or voting for Labour. And I take it personally as well. I take it personally for, like, my migrant friends. I take it personally as a trans person. You're voting for a party that wants to isolate us further, put us in further danger. And if you're happy to vote for that, then I do actually see that as an attack on me, and I won't be gaslit into thinking this is acceptable for what.
I think it's
genuinely name one good thing that Labour are offering right now.
Well, that's it, and those same people will say, an ability to disagree well seems to have disappeared, and these unbelievably cringy millennial memes that'll go around about, we can disagree on things and still be friends. And I'm like, we can disagree on, which is the best Taylor Swift album. We can't really disagree on whether it's okay to colonize and genocide. That's not a fucking thing. There are things that we should not disagree well on. They should preclude us from being friends. But I don't know, does that make me a bad Christian? Because is there something different? Should there be something different for a Christian leftist in the element of grace, in the element of expansiveness, and how this is a constant tension. Is I am at this point naturally leftist, I need to remember that is not my primary foundational and ultimate belief. It comes from my faith, and I see it as indivisible. But is there something that makes our Christian leftism different? Because I struggle with that. I struggle even with the nonviolence thing at this point, and that I think used to be easier. But I think when you get to a certain level of anger, it's do you
And
find that?
that's just with your own family, Jonty.
That's right. And you.
I think it's a really interesting question. It's something I've grappled a lot with in my work. Having done a lot of work reaching out with, in quite evangelical spaces, getting misgendered a lot, not particularly feeling safe, but recognizing that the work that I'm doing and the value that I'm doing and the kind of what I can give them, the learning I can give them and push them towards an anti-oppressive journey is really important. But I can only do that because that's what I feel safe enough to do that. I think it's often as well, I think if you have a position of privilege, it's much easier to engage in those kind of things. For example, like a conversation around race, I would be more willing to engage in, not because I think it's right or more valid to have those conversations, but because I'm a white person and I believe it's my responsibility to attempt to counter that. But I think that, there's some nuances to it. I think your safety has to play a role in those kind of decisions.
Laura, Malky, where do you fit on this at the moment? Where are you falling in terms of how your faith informs your politics, and is there a difference aside from just kind of pushing you in the direction of mercy and inclusion at a policy level? Laura, Malky are out.
Yeah, no, we're done. I don't know. I want to throw it back to. I feel like Jonty's definitely going to have some strong opinions on this. But I should address it to
So everyone is shocked.
as the guest. But is there not also a thing of, I'm going to try and pose this question, not a ridiculous caricature, but let's see what happens. These are all lovely ideas, guys, but we need to be pragmatic. You can't change anything if you're not in power, and you need to compromise on your principles a little bit, or pander to, the voters in order to get elected, so that we can do some slightly
Absolutely
nicer.
Not. Absolutely not. I mean, I think.
In Keir Starmer's defense, he has a history of changing his mind, so who knows?
You're so right. I think abolitionist learning is really important for me in like forming my opinions on this. There's a phrase, non-reformist reforms, talking about how we alleviate harms that are caused by carceral systems, and this can apply to anything, whilst continuing to undermine the very foundations and logics that uphold these systems. For example, doing teach-ins at prisons, does that make you complicit in upholding the prison system, or does that extending the bonds of solidarity and supporting people and undermining the very logic of isolation and punishment, that actually furthers the cause of doing away with prisons? So that's a better way of thinking about the kind of compromise, as you say. Rather than pragmatism, it's more about how can we alleviate harm whilst still challenging that which causes the harm. I think that's the approach I take.
But it's this when Tankies will say, charity is part of the problem, I get why they say that, but until the barricades are being manned, I don't, and we're all picking up our Molotov cocktails. I I think it's probably best if we also give aid to people who need the aid in ethical ways, in sustainable ways, in ways that are empowering rather than infantilizing or all of that. But ultimately, if it was me, and maybe this is where the Christian thing comes in, is it's like if we're talking about do unto others, if I was hungry, I would want to be fed rather than, get a pamphlet saying, well, feeding you is just perpetuating the system, man. You know what I mean? I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, mutual aid is so important, makes the world go round. I think there are some organizations that cause more harm than good in their work. And I think there are lots of organizations that waste a lot of money and resources. But overall, there are many that do more good than harm. And I think the goal is to push towards moving towards a system of mutual aid, solidarity, and reparations, as opposed to like charity and just aid.
Can you define mutual aid for us?
It's too late for that. It's too late. It's my bedtime. To me, mutual aid is like solidarity is the core value to it. It's about saying we're equals, and I see that there's a need, and I can give what I can to that. I think it's like it's Acts 2 community in action, really. It's pulling all our possessions and giving to the most in need, and it challenges that kind of colonial dynamic of charity as well. Again, it's non-prescriptive in what people spend the money on. I think that's an important part of mutual aid as well. It's our own kind of redistribution where the state is failing.
I gotta say, I love it's not colonial, but it's the colonial pathways of Western aid agencies, because I think of that as redistribution. I want, and my time in the charity sector that was doing that sort of stuff was very much around, I want to extract as much money from the British public as possible that can then be sent overseas to helping repair some of the damage done by colonialism and later imperialism. I think is kind of, yeah. The kinds of questions people are asking you when you're giving them the old education, that sounded weird. Sounded very re-education.
It sounds like you're beating people.
Giving them the old education.
The education and the
reform. What kind of stuff are people concerned about? Is it the same stuff? Are we in a hopelessly self-congratulatory left-wing bubble? What are other people talking about? What are they concerned about when they're wanting to vote?
Well, to my parents, probably in a self-congratulatory, but I can't even say it, bubble. I think there has been a lot more openness to learn than I expected, which is great. The themes that kind of come up are migration, particularly the Rwanda bill has been really alarming and disturbing to people. I feel like there's a lot of young Christians that are very interested in modern slavery. Obviously terrible, but I think it's a bit of a white savior thing going on there.
And also because it involves sex work, so it's a really nice way that you can be anti-sex work while feeling righteous.
Yeah. So I've not really heard that in my interactions, but just from picking up on vibes, that comes up a lot. But yeah, migration, climate justice is a big one. I think the kind of biblical imperative to look after creation is perhaps more accessible for people. I think at least a lot of the people that I work closely with, Palestine is a massive issue. I think there's been a lot of education recently within the Christian community about that because of there's such strong, Christian Zionism. I think it's been really important trying to platform Palestinian Christian voices as well, who are subject to the same colonialism and apartheid as their Muslim brothers, sisters, siblings in Palestine. I think there's always been a strong peace movement within the Christian faith, and I think trying to build on that and pull on that, as well as anti-apartheid when we're talking about South Africa, and trying to draw on those histories and apply them to kind of the current issues. That's part of the conversations that I've been having. I think a lot of young people care about mental health as well. That's something that's come up quite a lot in conversation. It's not really something I'm an expert. Well, you say that, my GP might disagree, but in terms of my work, that's not something I work on. I just suffer through every day with the rest of the world. Those are the main things.
And I feel like Rwanda is something that the UK church is particularly backed itself on. I feel like of all the kind of current affairs things that have kind of happened in the last 6 months, it feels like the Rwanda thing is really something that's hit churches really well. Is that positive do you think?
I mean, Rwanda's abhorrent, so I think it surprised me as well, but it's been great. I mean, the thing that I think is important to note about the Rwanda plan is that it's other settler colonies that have done this before. It's Australia and Israel that have done offshoring to asylum seekers before. So these are colonial tactics that the UK is sharing amongst its other colonial allies. And I don't think that's something that the church has grappled with yet, but I think it's a good start.
Yeah. Do you think of this as a gateway issue that the UK church can kind of get behind this, and it may lead to kind of a bit more hope into areas like Palestine?
I hope so. I hope when you explore why people seek asylum, it becomes very clear that it's so intertwined with patriarchy, with climate change, with conflict, that I hope that kind of education happens through that. It's completely inseparable from all of those issues. And I guess that's why organizations like the one I work for are kind of doing this mobilizing capacity building work at the moment, so that when there's the next government, they're ready to do community organizing. They're ready to be educated. They're open to being educated on other issues like Palestine.
I think for the sake of our listeners not in the UK, we should probably clarify when Bella says Rwanda is abhorrent, it's not about the country.
Oh no, that's terrible.
I'm sorry. I hate to have to call out a guest on their racism, but in order to be a true ally, I need to do it even in these spaces. No, can you give a quick explanation of what that is for those in the States or elsewhere who are listening?
Of course. Yes, Rwanda is not abhorrent. There's some beautiful hills. I've not been, but the Rwanda plan is a plan by the current, well, not anymore, Conservative government, drew up this proposal to deport what they deem to be illegal immigrants. There's no such thing as illegal immigrants. Everyone has the right to claim asylum and enter through any means. And they have this deal with Rwanda that they will deport deport people to Rwanda rather than to their home country, supposedly as like a safe third place for them to go. There was a really hilarious thing on Question Time where someone was saying, what if I'm Congolese and I then get deported to Rwanda? And the MP did not know that they are different countries.
Insane.
Much less that the recent history there would be incredibly unsafe. For,
I know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I worry that the reason so many people are against the Rwanda plan is because of a kind of colonialist racism, where they're like, that is inhumane to send them to a country in Africa, and it really doesn't matter which one. I think there's good reasons to be very nervous about the Kagame regime. Is it possible that that's not the win that we're hoping it might be?
I think that's where like we come in to do the work to ensure it's not. We continue challenging those ideas. And again, like I always say this, but hope is actually my middle name. But I think it's really powerful. I think it's our responsibility to offer an alternative, hopeful vision of society. And in doing that, you're able to undermine those kind of, I think you're right, there's definitely some colonial racist elements to that. But it's about pointing them back towards the fact that detention and deportation itself is violence, it's torture, it's state-sanctioned torture, and, you know, deporting anyone is wrong, especially to a place that they're unfamiliar with, don't have any connections to, and will be isolated and potentially vulnerable to further harm. So it's our job to kind of challenge that and ensure that it becomes a positive thing.
And it is depressing, like just how little that's reflected in the political landscape. Like watching a bit of the debates. Interestingly, Carla Denyer was asked about migration, and then started her answer on climate change, and I think was bullied by the moderator to be like, stop banging on about that. But her point that she eventually got to was actually we will see greater destabilization and wars, drought, famine that will bring migrants and refugees. So it's an issue of climate. And shout out to the SNP chap, Stephen Flynn, I want to call him, the Westminster leader, was actually calling out Labour for being dragged by the Tories, who've been dragged by Nigel Farage, and terrified because of Brexit. That I guess when we go back to 2019 and under Corbyn, a massive reason that they lost so heavily was because the Tories stood for Brexit. And then so it just seems like Labour are terrified to make a positive case. And the SNP were actually going like, migration is great for the country and we need it. And that was great to hear. Mm-hmm. And then the Lib Dems, in a Lib Demi way, kind of went there. What are they?
Weird for them to be wishy-washy. That's so odd. The Lib Dems? No, you must have. Really?
Am I right in thinking that they're up for trying to rejoin the single market?
Yeah, I think so.
Probably.
But saying like, pro Europe, but
as long as it helps Waitrose and whether we can get the stuff in the world food aisle, that's the main thing I think that the Dems are concerned with. I think that's the primary.
That's actually made me giggle. Yeah, I mean, I hate that we have to make the point that migration is good for the UK. Like, it's about people's humanity. We shouldn't have to make those points, but it's true as well. It is great for the UK. And
it's I just feel like going off on one, and because I feel like these things were, in my mind anyway, settled. There was a big study that came out again. It must have been 2019, or maybe in the wake of Brexit, that was just like migrants have a net positive on the economy. First of all, let's reject that framing of the question that people need to be, a net positive.
And I'm not, but
No.
a lot of them are.
Jonty has
For
dragged a
real.
lot of people into the gutter.
Really, morally, economically, it's all there.
Why do you
I'm
think
a
they're
net
here?
positive for like charity shops, and that's like it. That's my contribution to the British economy.
Excellent contribution.
It's a great contribution.
And yeah, good, Jonty.
Sorry, I thought maybe you were finished, but you aren't finished. I'm not going to interrupt you because I'm a good bloke.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, go on then. Yeah, you
I've
can.
just had a notification on my phone and I know what the football score is.
Okay, do not tell me. We didn't tell the listeners about this.
Okay.
And I'm ashamed
No.
to say it because I'll lose
Don't be
Scotland
ashamed.
points. And,
Sorry, nobody from Scotland listens to this.
my whole family, religiously,
They don't count.
Wow, Laura,
contribute to the show.
hate crimes just boom, boom, boom.
Anyway, for the sake of the listeners, I mean, at this point, when this goes out, then you probably won't be listening because the whole nation of Scotland will be in a drunken stupor because we'll have won the Euros by that stage.
Okay, this also feels racist. How am I the only one calling this out at this point?
That's for celebrating. You're racist by
He's
assuming.
wrong.
I'm saying we're only in a drunken stupor because we've had a historic victory, not just
I
because
wasn't suggesting
No,
because it was 7 o'clock.
It's a
Scotland
Tuesday.
are playing tonight in the Euros.
Which is
We're playing
soccer ball.
Switzerland, and it was 1-1 at halftime. At which point I stopped watching and came on the podcast.
I mean,
And if it-
Switzerland is a footballing juggernaut. No, one of the big
They've got
three,
a
right?
couple of good guys. Got a couple of good guys. But anyway, so I'm hoping iPlayer does its job by just pausing where I've left it, and I don't go back in to the living room to find final score. Anyway, so I'm trying to shut off all notifications. That's where I'm at in my life. And also, in terms of football and juggernauts, I'm just sidetracking the show now. Absolutely. But so it's been well notified that there's been a lot of Scottish people that have gone to Germany where the competition is being played. 200,000 or so.
What?
Which feels like a lot. And then my mate pointed out that if the same proportion of England had gone, then that would be like 2.5 English people going to watch the football in Germany.
2.5 English people.
2.5 million.
Oh,
Okay, that is a much
That's
better point.
significantly
Hilarious.
more English people. than 2.5.
It was so hard to get tickets though. I know my brother and my dad's life revolves around football. They are massive QPR fans, so yeah. It's not a life of joy, but they love football. And my dad's midlife crisis was tracing our family history back to like medieval England. I've got some quite interesting stories I can dig out from there. My political resistance comes from being related to the two brothers that were like Guy Fawkes besties, so the Gunpowder Plot.
Nice.
You
So-
told me this. When we
Yeah.
met, you told me the story. That's an
Yeah,
excellent
it's so
story.
exciting. What was I saying? Oh yeah, my dad wants to find his like long lost cousins in Germany because we're a quarter German and a quarter Scottish.
Cool.
But they didn't go.
Heartbreaking.
Lost
Yeah.
a chance. So sad.
Well, you don't know if they've lost their chance, Laura, because nobody knows how it's gone, you know? Like, there still could be time.
So get to Germany.
It can't,
This is
but
when
if-
you don't have
it's
the
got-
big backing of like the TV show that the celebrities do.
Yeah.
Who do you
they
think
need
you are or
that.
whatever?
Yeah, they need that. And then you should go to Germany.
Anyway, look, the listeners do obviously listen to this primarily for our football chat because it's usually
We're a
so
very
insightful.
blokey podcast.
Expert.
It's
All
so
about the
blokey, yeah.
lads.
Yeah, let's. I wanted to talk about pragmatic voting and kind of compromise voting because for me, like voting's the compromise, right? Like we're participating in the system, we're playing along, you know? It's still fundamentally flawed. We're still, I mean, I'm voting for parties that none of whom have said we need to dismantle capitalism, but I'm willing to vote for them because I'm not unreasonable. And I think people lecturing me to be even more reasonable need to maybe come towards me a little bit and at some point. And, you know, like my concern about post-Brexit and post-COVID, the economic situation for the UK in terms of its debts, in terms of its expenses as a nation, are going to mean that the next few years, without a radical overhauling of the tax system, are going to be absolutely brutal. Whoever wins is going to be overseeing a situation in which a lot of people in Britain suffer a lot. Why the fuck would you want to win? Because whoever wins the next one is going to be unelectable for a generation. I firmly believe this. So
yeah, they're setting themselves up for failure.
Yeah, like who? Because everyone, after 5 years of suffering, of much worse austerity than we've seen so far, even, they're going to hate the party that was in power, and
I think what's stressful as well is that it's like people are acting like they don't know this. Certainly, it feels like the Labour Party are acting like they don't know this. Like, have you seen what the Tories are doing? Like, introducing national service? Like,
they're shooting their shot entirely because they know they can't lose.
Deliberately throwing the election.
Well, they're throwing the election, or they're like, if people like this, we're gonna try our most out there shit.
Yeah.
And if they go for it, hey, then we win. If they don't, we still win because it's a poison chalice. I'm back.
I also have works in politics and was pointing out that the advertising spend for the Tories has been massively under what they would, because they're like, we're not going to waste our money on this.
Yeah.
You know. But Bella, you alluded to a kind of offshoot of the Labour Party, or a, you know, branching off, or a new version or something. What are the chances of that happening?
I mean, at the moment, it's all sensible centrists. I think I complain a lot, like a lot of people who did Oxbridge, about Oxbridge. I know I'm part of the problem, but it's the same very, you know, public school, arrogant white men who think they're more sensible than you. Exactly the same logics of colonialism, telling you that you're being hysterical and blah, 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 blah. The likelihood of that happening, I mean, I've said my middle name's Hope. I've got to try and remain hopeful, right? But I think, to me, party politics is probably not the answer to our solutions. It's about community organising. That doesn't mean I wouldn't love to have Jez or someone else back in a mainstream party offering us genuine change. But they did well the Labour right did really well to undermine, and I also see this as fundamentally linked to Palestinian liberation as well. That is the main reason. We can talk about Brexit. You know, the media obviously were never going to allow a socialist to power, but the main problem was his unwavering commitment to Palestinian liberation. And that is why, as well, Labour are so Zionist, because they, within their own party, utilised this weaponization of anti-Semitism to undermine Corbyn. So they're so desperately trying to escape that brush that they tarnished him with, that they've gone full pro-genocide. So that didn't end up very hopeful, did it?
But it's also like really hard to form a political party, because never, right, even setting to one side kind of proportional representation, which seems to never get in because it doesn't suit the big two parties, and the big two parties would never, you know, give us the means to which to liberate ourselves from them. But also, who was the party that popped up that tried to be a centrist type of? There was a bunch of defectors. I think it was Change UK or something.
Oh,
what was that?
It's not the SDP.
No,
they are still a thing, and they were the guys who were like, listen, Labour isn't right-wing enough.
Yeah.
So this was, I want to say, Chuka Uma, who was in for the, I'm maybe mispronouncing his name, was in for the leadership candidate of the Labour Party and then defected. And then there was a bunch of kind of centrist types from Labour and Tories that
Yeah,
tried
sensible
and
sallies around
yeah.
Brexit and
but
post.
I think, yeah, just the sort of infrastructure that you need seems
I mean,
significant.
the Lib Dems had their chance, right? I mean, it was a kind of a, what was it, AV? And no one knows what that is. But they shafted students over with, so they lost all support. And then, yeah, got in bed with austerity. So that didn't go through, which is a shame.
But
really.
this is what concerns me about the Green Party, because I agree their manifesto is the closest thing that you can have to what I would want currently in this election. And I was surprised by how great it was. But a party that has no union links worries me, because how much of its DNA can be invested in, can be connected to the struggle of the people who are doing the work for society rather than those who are. It's really easy to be liberal and still keep the status quo.
That's a really good point. I've got a friend who is like the union rep for the Green Party in Scotland. I suppose again that's where like we have to come in and do the work to make those changes. I mean, I think they have some relationship with Acorn, like tenants unions. I've seen that they're backing Sean Berry here because of what they're doing for tenants' rights and housing. But I mean, yeah, it is wild how much money unions still give to Labour with getting nothing in return.
Absolutely nothing.
Well, they're not Unite though. Unite aren't. I mean, they're probably giving money to them, but they're not endorsing them anymore.
Good.
Which is, yeah, sad.
That's my union. Love it.
Same.
Hey, Mick Lynch is all right. If him and Jeremy can get involved in forming a party,
that'd be great.
That'd look all right.
That'd be all right. I mean, yeah, that'd be good. Again, this is all a compromise. I just think, yeah. All right, let's talk about, okay, this is all fine and well, but what's really important is what we're drinking. So, Bella, what are you drinking?
I've been so boring. I've literally been drinking water.
Good Lord,
I should have lied. I've got a very nice yellow kettle up here, so I am going to make myself a chai after this. But
nice.
Yeah, sorry. I'm too miserable to be drinking alcohol.
You're too dedicated to the cause. You are. I have no time for distraction. I need water just so that I can hydrate myself for the struggle.
Hydrate or dihydrate?
Yeah, hydrate. Hydrate to dominate. Laura, what you drinking?
I have had a can of gin and tonic, and I think, as per the last few episodes, I think it might be the last one available to steal from Jonty's home bar. So next time we record, I'm going to have to rootle around for something else.
Unthinkable, you might have to buy your own booze.
I might actually have to buy something for myself, which is shocking. No, I think I brought my own bottle of Jack Daniels here, so then that must be there. There's some whiskey on there that's mine, I think. So who knows what I'll be drinking next time? That's exciting.
I do miss a G&T. That's like a fresh pint and a G&T. Like the crappy, like alcohol-free beers that come in a bottle and then they charge you like £5 for them still. It's like, what am I paying for? Yeah, I miss that, but I'm too sad. So I've got to be a sensible Sally.
Love it. Speaking of shitty alcohol-free beers, Malky, what you?
I'm drinking a shitty alcohol-free beer.
Oh, interesting.
But at least it's not expensive.
Hey.
You know, it's low cost. Pearl and Backer, and good guess, Jonty, that you are correct. It's the one that Aldi does, and it's not very expensive, and it tastes all right.
Nice. Gotta love
That's the
it.
solution there,
What about you, Jonty?
I am drinking Car Park John, which was
Car
my
Park John!
It was my nickname in prison, actually. No, it's it's not bad. It's an amber ale. It's South African. It's named after a surfer. Of course, it fucking is. I don't know. It's fine. It's very nice.
There's a surfer called Car Park John.
Okay. Now you're making me read like a
He's
nerd.
surf in a car park?
Our very own local surfing legend, John Skierpers, aka Car Park John, has been tearing up PE surf since the beginning of time itself.
Car parks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. All he's done for the surfing community, tropical aromas. I don't know, man. I like watching the surfers. It's quite fun. And I have this, which is Cowie Gold Pilsner, which my brother got for me because they had this little initiative in the local supermarket for a blood drive. And it was a pint for a pint. So you give a pint of blood, they will they'll give you a pint of beer to take home.
That's incredible.
And my brother doesn't drink, so he was like, I'm going to give blood, but you can have the pint.
That's such a good idea.
I'm glad you added to take home, because I know some people get all faint.
Have you done that? It's fun. when you're a teenager, not when you're a grown person. But
no, I think I had a biscuit and I sit down.
Oh, I asked them if I allowed them to take another pint from me, if I could take it home. And they got cross.
Never not knowing the off-brand.
I just say, like, you can say no, but I don't like the horror and the pill clutching. Fuck off. It's my blood.
So gross, so fast, surely.
You guys are so brave. Like I had all of the nurses in hospital laughing at me because they took some blood and I vomited and passed out. And they were like, people don't do this. And I was like, oh, I just hate it.
Definitely do that.
People do that. I don't like looking when the needle goes in.
No, people.
But I quite like the blood. The blood itself is interesting, but the needles, I can't.
It took me a long time to admit that I didn't like needles. Like, that is, pure toxic masculinity embedded. Because I fainted a couple of times, fainted once and fell back and hit my head. Like it was in for a basic.
Headbutted somebody. Is that a different test?
Did I get any blood test then? Nah. That was just a normal concussion. But the point is, I had a blood test before. This is just a blood test, and passed out on the floor, and then got another one a few months later, a couple of years later, and she's like, "All right, we need those." And I'm like, "Yeah." And then that one, I must have tilted backwards, hit my back of the head off the wall, and then they wanted that wasn't that bad, but then they wanted to keep me in to check, and then I had to call my wife to come and get me and sit with me in the A&E. You know how I went for a blood test? So since then, when it comes to needles, I'm like, I will lie down and listen to peaceful music, and you treat me like a child and take this blood.
I thought it was like the sucking blood and the blood pressure thing on your arm, but then
do you mean like a vampire? I don't know. It's like a small Transylvanian man crawls up your arm.
Yes. No, the the blood pressure thing.
Yeah, there's cuff and you have to lock the thing.
Yeah, I thought it was that. But then I get my birth control as an injection in my bum, and I passed out from that. And she was like,
"But you can't even see that."
I know.
Okay, right. Sorry. No, I mean, no shaming you, obviously.
No. Shame me. It is tragic. For some reason, tattoos fine, but
weird.
Medical.
Interesting.
That's a lovely way to leave my time on the podcast. My medical trauma.
We like it very much. Do you have any final words for people, particularly people in the UK who are, considering who they vote for and all of these questions? But for people generally, facing kind of these questions within their democracies?
I think the key thing is like voting is just such a small part of democracy and political engagement. I think it's important, but it gets built up into this massive thing, and that means people see it as like the be all and end all, and it's just not. You got to do more than that. Unfortunately, it's not enough to sit and allow us slide further and further into fascism. We've got to be building community. We've got to be engaging in mutual aid. We've got to join trade unions. We've got to go to protests. We've got to mobilize in our workplaces, in our churches, in our families, in our friend groups. So hopefully people will listen to this and feel some hope about the alternatives that can happen. But if you are scared or you're worried, then channel that energy into doing something to challenge it.
And you're not alone. If you think that these choices that you're being presented as obvious are not obvious and horrific, in fact, you're not alone. There are others of us out there who also feel that, and there's more than you think. So, yeah. Thanks so much, Bella. So great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And where would you think people should go to look for more information? What would you recommend?
I know, I don't love Navarra at the moment. I've got a lot of issues with Cop Aram Bastani, but they have been doing quite very distilled Instagram posts comparing manifesto pledges on various themes. So if you are not a politics geek like me and you don't want to read the whole thing of everyone, it's good to get a little flavour of that. I was going to plug my work then, but I can't do that.
You can't do it. Don't do it. I asked the question. I was like, shit.
Yes. If you do some stalking and want to follow my work, then it's great. I would say that because it's my work. But yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And if you would like to hear more from Beer Christianity, you can find us beerchristianity.co.uk. If you have any thoughts and comments, email us beerchristianity@yahoo.com because we're old school like that. And you can find us on Instagram, on everywhere. You can find us everywhere, basically. We do have a TikTok account, but I have lost the login. So I guess I don't know. I don't know. You know,
well,
you have the login, you know?
I have the login. We all have the login.
If anybody wants to write in and tell Laura that she needs to sort this out, then I think that you should do that. I think that'd be
one person who doesn't have TikTok on their phone.
This is what I'm trying to change, Laura. Be the change.
This is where your campaign starts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't.
Anyway, thanks for listening and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.